What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Talking About Baseball, and today we have a guest here. We are going to be going over our power rankings for the 2023 season so far. It's almost September, and it's about to be playoff time, so let's get started.
First, we got, in last place, the Kansas City Royals. Really, all they have is Bobby Witt Jr. this year. Not a big fan of their pitching staff, not a big fan of anyone else really on that team, but yeah, I don't know what to say about them. They're just not really that good.
Number 29, we have the Oakland Athletics. They've been incredibly bad this year. All they've had this year is Esterio Ruiz and Brent Rooker, and pretty much that's all they've got. Really, the only reason they're at 29 instead of 30 is the fact that they've beat the White Sox 2 times in a row now. They do have a worse record than the Kansas City Royals, and you'll be seeing pretty soon that the reason he's put his arms up like that is because number 28 is the Chicago White Sox. He is a White Sox fan, and pretty much kind of like the Royals, all the White Sox have had this year is Luis Robert. They've traded away anyone else who's good, and pretty much their team has just sucked all year.
27, we have the Colorado Rockies. Not much to say about them, just not really performing well. They did beat my team, the White Sox, though. I'm really sad about that. Was kind of just talking about that. And I don't know, I'm just not a big fan of the team. I don't think they have really that much future, and yeah. Number 26, we have the St. Louis Cardinals. They've been really disappointing this year in the fact of having Arenado and Coachman on the same team. Just need some help pitching-wise. They're not the best, but they're not the worst either, so they're just okay. They're just okay. And, yeah, they're just trash.
At number 25 is the Nationals. The Nationals have looked really bad this year. They did get Dylan Cruz in the draft, but outside of that, they don't even really have any superstars on their roster. There's been some players that have looked good this year, like Joey Meneses and Mackenzie Gore, but outside of that, their team's been pretty much garbage all year, like most of these teams here at the bottom.
At number 24, we have the Pittsburgh Pirates. They were doing really good in the first half of the season, and then it just kind of fell off. I don't know what happened there. There's a few players I like on the team, like Ryan Hayes, Brian Reynolds, really underrated player, and I think they can definitely step it up with their pitching-wise.
At number 23, we have the Detroit Tigers. They've been pretty bad all year. Recently, Spencer Torkelson and Kerry Carpenter have begun to get better, but they still have not been very good all year. The pitching staff has looked awful outside of Erod, and they're just not really a great team, and their rebuild has been lasting an incredibly long time. At number 22, we have the Los Angeles Angels. They recently lost Shohei on the pitching side to injury. Mike Trout has been injured for over half the season, and they traded the number 2 and 3 prospects at the deadline to keep Shohei in town, and it has not worked, and they're still under 500 and a terrible team.
Number 21, we have the New York Mets. The trade deadline, they lost Max Scherzer. They lost really everybody, and the only few players they really have is Lindor and Pete Alonso, and it's really struggling now. It's really a disappointing team. I thought they would be somewhat racing the wild card and maybe making a good playoff run. And, yeah, that's a lot to say about them.
At number 20, I have the Cleveland Guardians. They made the playoffs last year and made a pretty deep run until they got lost to the Yankees in the playoffs. They've looked awful this year. Andres Gimenez has regressed completely. Shane Bieber they lost to injuries, and a lot of rookies have had to step up, and some of them have and some of them have not. They recently lost one of their best players offensively, Josh Naylor, to injury, but he will be coming back soon. Jose Ramirez is definitely the superstar of this team, but the Guardians are still definitely not a great team.
At number 19, we have the New York Yankees. Another disappointing team, being in probably the best division you'll ever see in a long time. It's a winning record currently sitting right now. Aaron Judge has been hurt for a little while, but he's coming back. He's had great games. Garrett Cole's looking good. It's just they're not putting the puzzle piece together. I don't think Volpe has been really solid this year, and they got to figure it out. So, yeah.
At number 18, I have the San Diego Padres. They've looked awful all year, and they just really have some stars that don't even really work around their team. They had a star-studded roster, and Juan Soto and Fernando Tatis Jr. have looked amazing this year. Ha-Seong Kim has looked like almost an MVP candidate, but he's kind of the level below that. But the Padres definitely have some main stars, but they also have some huge holes on their roster, and that is why they're below 500. And my World Series pick for this year is definitely not going to happen. At number 17, we have the Miami Marlins. They were in the wild card race in the NL for a while, but they have been enduring a very long cold streak ever since the trade deadline, and it does not look like they will even have a chance to make the playoffs anymore. And at number 16, we have the Minnesota Twins. They have been surging lately. They are now in a comfortable first place in the AL Central. No one else is even above 500 in that division, and they will easily make the playoffs, but will also probably get swept first round immediately, as they are going to be one of the worst teams that makes the playoffs in the AL.
At number 15, we have the Cincinnati Reds. They've definitely made some big improvements. I did not expect them to be at 15. Ellie De La Cruz looking like one of the best prospects out of Cincinnati in a while. I'm really liking this team. I think this team's got a lot of potential, and I think they do some stuff with their pitching staff. They'll be a good team. At number 14, we have the San Francisco Giants. I didn't expect them to, again, I didn't really expect them to be at 14. Jock Peterson's been really good. I think Crawford's, with his last year, has been pretty solid. Camilo Doval, one of my favorite closers in the game, is doing pretty solid, and I think these guys can make a good run.
At number 13, we have my Chicago Cubs. The Cubs recently almost gave up their wild card spot, but they are now at number 6. I think that's a lot more of a preferable spot for them, as they will face the Brewers in that spot. But anyway, the Cubs have looked much better, just like the last 2 teams this year, than I think people thought they would. The Cubs are projected to probably finish 3rd or 4th in their division, and they have been a good playoff team. Cody Bellinger has been an amazing player, back to MVP belly form. Nico Horner and Dansby Swanson have looked great up the middle, and the Cubs really don't have any large, massive holes as of right now, in my opinion, and I think they could definitely make a playoff run, but probably not all that far.
Number 12, we have the Arizona Diamondbacks. Corbin Carroll's looking really solid right now, looking like the NL Rookie of the Year. Zach Allen, who really surprised me this year, is doing an awesome job. I think these guys are falling off a little bit, but they definitely make a huge run in the playoffs, and I think these guys will do a lot better than they were last year. A lot better.
At number 11, I have the Boston Red Sox. They didn't really start out all that great, but they've been looking a lot better recently. Rafael Devers has looked really good this year, and they've definitely been able to replace Xander Bogaerts, as they've been even better this year without him. Their pitching has looked all right all year, and Tristan Casas has looked like a very good player in the last 2 months, and I think the Red Sox could potentially make a playoff push. At number 10, we have the Toronto Blue Jays. Their offense is amazing, but their pitching has been the better part so far this year, and their offense has actually been slightly underwhelming. The biggest pieces of their offense have definitely been Bo Bichette, Vladdy, Matt Chapman, George Springer, and plenty of other players that have contributed to the offense, but they don't really have any true superstars. They have a lot of good pitching this year, like Kevin Gausman, and their bullpen has been locked down, led by Jordan Romano, but they've also had one very disappointing pitcher, and that would be Alek Manoah. The Blue Jays currently sit a game and a half out of the playoffs, and I do think they could definitely still make it, but I'm not really sure how far they would make it into the playoffs if they were to make the playoffs.
At number 9, we have the Milwaukee Brewers. I've seen a couple of games at their stadium this year. I think Devin Williams is pretty solid. I think their whole team is looking really good. Not much holes in it. As I say to almost every team, they could be a good team in the playoffs. I don't know how far they would make it, though. And I think there's definitely teams still better than the Brewers, but they're a good team.
Yeah, there is teams better than the Brewers. That's why they're at 9. At number 8, we have the Houston Astros. They have dropped to 3rd place in their division, and they have not been looking very good lately. They recently got swept by the Mariners and the Red Sox. The Astros have dropped a ton lately. They are now down to the 5th wild card spot in the AL. They could potentially miss the playoffs, but I see that highly unlikely, as they're the reigning World Series champs. The Astros still have a very solid team. They just need to pick it up, and I think they could definitely go back-to-back, but their team this year has not looked as good as it was last year. At number 7, I have the Texas Rangers. The Rangers looked amazing after they traded for Max Scherzer and Jordan Montgomery to add on to a team that already had players like Marcus Semien, Corey Seager, and Adolis Garcia. And on the pitching side, they already had a really good team, and they made it even better. Recently, they have just not looked very good. They need to start picking it up, and I think they could definitely win the World Series. I think they have a really solid chance to win the World Series, but they need to end this losing streak they're currently in and take back the division lead that they should rightfully have. But currently, they are at number 7.
We have the Philadelphia Phillies. Bryce Harper just got back from his injury. Looked good in the Little League World Series games, if you guys watched that. Zach Wheeler has been looking a lot better. I think this team could make it. It's just a weird team to explain, and just weird team in the playoffs. So yeah. At number 5, we have the Seattle Mariners.
The Mariners have looked really good this year. Their pitching has been absolutely amazing. They have a big 3 in Logan Gilbert, Luis Castillo, and Bryce Miller. Bryce Miller recently came back, and they also have plenty of other pitchers. They even lost Robbie Ray to Tommy John surgery early in the season, and they have still been absolutely amazing this year. I think the Mariners can make a really deep playoff run. Julio Rodriguez has looked much better as late, but the rest of their offense is still not really all that good, but I think they could definitely make a deep run, as they are now in 1st place in the AL West. At number 4, I have the Tampa Bay Rays. The Rays have looked amazing all year, but they've gone through tons of Tommy John surgeries and injuries, and just a lot of off-the-field things as well, mainly with Wander Franco recently, which we will get into that with a different video. Shane McClanahan, Jeffrey Springs, and Drew Rasmussen, the 3 best pitchers on the roster in my opinion, all went out with Tommy John surgery this year. Their bullpen has not looked great recently, and their rotation, like I said, is incredibly depleted, but they still have an insane offense even without Wander Franco, with Yandy Diaz, Randy Arozarena, and also Jose Siri, and I think this team could make a deep playoff run. I also wouldn't be surprised if they got eliminated round 1.
Number 3, the Los Angeles Dodgers. These guys are really just known for choking in the playoffs, but I think this year could be the year, as they have one of the best back-to-back of all time hitters. Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman look outstanding this year, especially with their batting average and the way they're hitting right now. I think young prospects like Bobby Miller and Clayton Kershaw's not young, but I think they could do some damage in the playoffs for sure.
At number 2, we have the Baltimore Orioles. They are obviously headlined by their catcher, Adley Rutschman, but their pitching staff has not looked amazing this year, but they have obviously looked good enough to get them at number 2 and the 1 seed in the AL. Their offense has looked amazing this year, but one of their biggest problems is the fact that they just lost Felix Bautista to injury. Their bullpen is still locked down, as Yennier Cano will probably take over the closer role for now, and I think Felix Bautista will easily be back for the playoffs as long as it's not something serious. And at number 1, we obviously have the Atlanta Braves. They have been dominant all year. No one is taking their number 1 seed spot. They have a top-to-bottom great offense. They have Sean Murphy at catcher, Matt Olson at first, Ozzie Albies at second. Their shortstop, Orlando Arcia, was somehow an all-star for his very first year. Austin Riley at third. Marcelo Zuna and Eddie Rosario have been looking much better so far. They split the left field and DH role, and then they have Michael Harris for center field, and obviously the NL MVP and potential 40-40 player, Ronald Acuna Jr. in right, and that's without even mentioning their pitching. Max Fried recently came back off of the IL, and he has looked amazing since then. Spencer Strider has been one of the best pitchers in the NL, and potentially the Cy Young of the NL, and their bullpen has obviously been amazing, as they are easily the best team in baseball. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you very much for helping me with this video. I will see you all next time. Bye.